and welcome to the 17th episode of the Frontend Coffee Break, a podcast where we take a little break from our everyday lives and grab a cup of joe or whatever you like to drink and discuss about different front-end topics. So today, as always, I have my co-post podcast host, Ricard. Hello.
That was tough. Yes, hello, I'm here. Barcelona weather is fantastic. I wish it could be like this all year long, but yeah.
Well, it is a little bit fresh. It's nice. I mean, we're getting a bit of rain, a bit of sunshine. So yeah, it's if it wasn't for the allergies, it would be a fantastic time of the year for me. I hate allergies.
I'm not allergic to good weather, but yeah.
It's not the good weather the issue. But anyhow, thank you for joining, Ricard, once more. And today's topic, it's a topic that you've been pushing a little bit for us to discuss for some time now, which is a favorite of yours. And it's centered in around one of the questions that we sometimes ask during the interviews, which is basically how to work with images in the web. And well, right now we call it in 2023, but basically it's just images and how to work with images, right?
It's not my favorite topic of all time. Come on. I do like to ask it because, how we used to do stuff no longer applies. And yeah, it tells a lot about the developer if they know how to properly add images onto a website.
Well, but basically images is just the using the img tag. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you very much for joining us in today's podcast. See you next time. No, but it's not just about the image tag, right?
It is not. It is not. I mean, even images. Nowadays it's like mandatory. I mean, how many websites are there that don't have images? But how you load them. What format do you use? What techniques are there for performance? And all those things we want to talk about today. But yeah, I think first and foremost is how do you actually add image to a website? What HTML tag do you use? Is it image tag?
Well, it depends a lot of what I want to achieve. I do use, depending on it, the image tag or the picture tag. I'm moving between one and the others, and there's not the only things depending on what I'm also doing. Icons, I usually don't use images as I used to back in the day. Mm-hmm. But back in the day, we basically only had the image tag if we wanted to add the images or background images if you want to do something cooler.
Oh yeah, backgrounds.
I remember that one of the super fun techniques, because even though the limited, back in the day, I remember at the beginning of work that we had a very limited bandwidth, and although we don't have that much limitations, and our phones usually are going to go faster than we used to go and download a song if you wanted to in I don't know how long, a 5-minute song would take a half an hour or an hour to download. Remember. Back then, they had to find creative ways to use images, because images are also always super. They catch the people's attentions a lot, and they enhance the visually the web. But they have to they found ways to use images in low bandwidth. And even though today we have higher bandwidth, we still find ways, and we're going to discuss about ways to optimize the use of images, because it's one of the most one of the things that is usually heavy, or the heaviest, or one of the heaviest things that you download in a website. But let's talk about images at the beginning. Do you remember using the background image like a super small pixel, image that it's like, I don't know, 8x8, and then repeat it entirely in the background of the website?
I mean, but that's good. I mean, I made a side project not like 2 weeks ago, and I did it. I used like a background repeat, and it works. I like what you said about bandwidth. I don't think it has changed much. I mean, maybe like back in 10 years ago, maybe images were considered heavy if they were maybe 100 kilobytes. But now, we have more bandwidth, but the images are way much bigger. I mean, you've seen hero banners with 3 megabyte images or 4 megabyte images,
yes,
because authors don't know better, poor things, and they just get the image from the design team, they just upload it to the website. So in the end, I think that the problem just is scale, because now it maybe for them, because they have a latest MacBook and a fiber connection, they don't notice it. But of course, if you go mobile first, if you go to markets where there's not like 4G, maybe to 3G or 2G, yeah, so it's important.
And I think that that's one of the biggest things that the biggest issues is that people they receive images from, for example, the designers, and they just add them just like that. And the images might be thousands of pixels wide, as you said, like hero banner, even though that it might use, I don't know, 2,000 pixels width of the screen. They might give you a 4,000, 8,000. I don't know. Well, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but yeah, a really big banner, and people just go ahead and use that one. I mean, there has to be better ways to use it. I mean, what would you recommend?
Yes. So back to the original question about interviews, and I love when candidates tell me that they use the picture element.
Okay.
So
why?
Excellent. Thank you for the follow-up, Chucho. Fantastic interview. So the picture element allows you to define different files or formats in one encapsulated way. So before you had just image tag, and now you will have a picture element, and inside different sources. You could say, for instance, you were talking about responsive, right? So for instance, let's say you want to load a small image on mobile. You would have a source with a media query. In that source, that would say, okay, maybe the image is 1 by 1, like a square or a vertical format, or simply just a smaller resolution, right? And then you would have another source element inside the picture that would be for, from 1,000 pixels or 2,000, and it would be a bigger image, different format perhaps, different layout, doesn't really matter. But it allows you to have different sources depending on the viewport, which is fantastic.
But this is something that you can also do with the image tag now. And the image tag is well, although I think that nowadays is not that important, it used to be had more support. So why not use the image tag, just because what you basically described could be done in the image tag?
So you got to be careful. Sometimes if you have multiple image tags and use hide and show via CSS, the browser might still download the images, right? With the picture element, the browser really understands the syntax and the markup, and they will just download what's needed for that viewport in that time. So it really, it's very performance focused, and the users will not feel it. If they just open on mobile viewport, they will not download desktop whatsoever.
I remember that one of the things that we usually get when we ask questions, especially for more junior developers, is that how do you, if you imagine you want to have responsive images because you want to show one image that's this amount of pixels in well, usually we say that one image when it's mobile and a different image slightly when it's desktop. Yeah. And usually the solution that they come up with is either, CSS. They involve usually CSS. When, as you say, right now the picture tag and the image tag have solutions or ways to handle this kind of things. You can show one and the other. But there's always a big distinction, right? When you're using images and pictures, they tell you, okay, the images should be used here, image tags, and picture tags should be used in this other situation. Could you tell us a bit about that situation? Or is it just like you want to write less, use image, you don't care about writing more?
No. I mean, I don't know where you're coming from, but surely image tags have their own. It's not like we're deprecating the image tag. Image tags have a certain purpose, and it might be valid. You would still use it for certain scenarios, maybe icons, maybe a logo, doesn't really matter. But picture elements, when it comes to different resolutions or different file formats, you would need a picture element. When would you use then image tag, Chucho?
Yes. But the thing is that, for example, in one of the projects that also one of the most optimized projects that we have with images, we used a lot of image tags still. But it goes more of a one of the things that they tell you to use picture is when it's more of an art direction. They tell you that you need different sources depending on because you can handle different sources depending on the situation. Also, one of the advantages that the picture tag has is the fact that, for example, WebP started to be supported widely not very long ago, but before it was basically just supported by Chrome. And if you wanted to take advantage of this, if you wanted to, for example, have the people that were using Chrome download lower image sizes, you would use WebP, but then what happened to the rest? Like, for example, Explorer or Firefox or any other? Well, you needed to provide an alternative, and that's what picture. That was something that you could do with picture. You could say, okay, if you don't support WebP, then use the JPEG or use the PNG or whatever.
Yes, that's where we're going. Where we're going with the follow-up question about formats, right? Definitely, I think JP, PNG are old-fashioned, and even though sometimes if you misconfigure, misoptimize WebP or AVIF, you could have bigger WebP files than JPEGs. That's for sure. So you need to be careful there. But usually, yeah, I mean, WebP would be the format that would supersede JPEGs and PNGs, and then now we have AVIF, which is not very well supported. But yeah, I mean, I think what I've done in the past also, like let's say you don't have access to generating multiple WebPs or PNGs, it's having the server like optimize it for you, right? Maybe you have just an image tag, as we were saying before, just an image tag with an actual JPEG. But when the request comes to the server can know if you can actually render in JPEGs or WebPs, and then it would, even though the URL is WebP or JPEG, they would send different content headers and content types, and a little bit hacky, but it could be done.
A little bit hacky. No, but definitely right now, I guess that having a full image solution that is as optimized as it can, it doesn't only involve the front end, but also involves the backend, the backend as well, the servers and the infrastructure and such. But going back into the formats, the first I remember that at the beginning I was using two formats. I was using GIFs. I think that's the official way to pronounce it, although I usually go with a GIF, but it's a GIF, and JPEG. I remember that the GIF was like anything that didn't need more than 256 colors.
Yeah,
that was the main limitation, because otherwise I would use that. You used with GIFs, and anything else, pictures specifically, you went with JPEG. Also, one of the nice things about the GIFs that I love, I don't know if you used it. I mean, I guess everyone that started back then used it, was the progressive GIFs. That you started loading, and then you saw like the big pixels. Through time, that was. I do not know why we don't have that. Maybe it's because it occupies too much space. I don't know. But it was fun to see. Well, fun. It was nice to see a progression while the page was loading. And right now, well, it's a bit different. Anyhow, and then suddenly the big revolution came back then, which was the PNG. And suddenly PNG could do anything that both GIFs and both JPEG could do, because one of the things that JPEG was lacking was transparency, which could be achieved with GIFs. So right now, I guess the two biggest kings, I would say, or I would like to know your opinion, is precisely PNG and maybe WebP. What is your thought regarding on these, and if JPEG is dead or not?
I think eventually it will die down once we have, again, more support for AVIF and new formats. I think that's also like JPEG XL, which is yet another format, right? So I think it's just a matter of browser vendors. As soon as they give like wide support for all the new things, why would you use a less compressible format, right? If you have like it's lossless compression, you don't lose anything, or it's not like really, you cannot tell it by just looking if you do pixel peep. So it's fine. The one that we haven't mentioned is SVG vectors.
Okay,
not for like pictures or photos, but definitely widely used right nowadays.
Well, I guess I usually in the latest project I was using WebP, but would you believe me that it has been maybe over a year that I haven't implemented a single image or picture tag?
Interesting.
Yes, it has been a long time. I would even say that probably more than a year, but I haven't worked with images for quite a bit of time. Whether because one of the projects that I'm in doesn't require until very recently, and after a long time, an image tag was used, and the other project it's simply. I mean, it has all the main things built, and I haven't had to create any component or any support to anything that had images. So then I don't know what's your experience.
Complete opposite. So I think I don't want to say time frame, but maybe last year or something. So in our project we had like only like JPEG support, right? So when we were asking renditions to the backend. Let's say, you want a 1-for-1 rendition or 16:9 rendition. You would request it to the backend, and the backend would on the fly generate that rendition, cache it, of course, save it to the front end, but all in JPEG. And I said, okay, it's time. We are in 2022, 2021. It's time to use please WebP. So I asked the backend engineers to engineer something in the backend. That would not only create the JPEG rendition, but also create the WebP rendition, right? And then on the front end, I simply had to go to the picture tag, which I already had, and simply add a new source, which was for the WebP. And then easy as that, I had a bunch of performance boost on the front end for those who were able to download WebPs. So yeah.
Nice.
And the second thing I did recently is, if you believe it or not, I was able finally to remove a bunch of JavaScript that was doing basically lazy loading.
Oh, well, that would be one of the biggest things I guess we've gotten in the last few years.
Yeah.
Lazy loading, the support of the lazy load attribute, which was something that I remember we've talked about internally about projects of libraries, of lazy loading libraries. I mean, the previous project that I was in, we had our own lazy loading implementation. And we've worked in Cognizant and Sentry, we've worked in creating our own internal lazy loading library with the idea of being used everywhere else. And suddenly it's like, that's obsolete. There's lazy loading. And I think it's one of the biggest things that we had. I mean, what is your experience with lazy loading, or why would you recommend it?
Definitely, I'm with you, and I had the same experience where we had to develop a custom solution for the project using intersection observer and things like that to detect if the image tag or picture tag was in the viewport, and then just actually load the file. But now that was gone, so I went ahead and asked the client, hey, now we have support. Our browser project matrix has been updated, and we now only support whatever browsers. So we had
browsers.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think it's. I think we were waiting for Safari something. I think Safari was the latest to integrate lazy loading. I don't remember exactly. Anyway, I was able to remove a bunch of JavaScript by just adding a simple HTML attribute. Loading equals lazy on certain places, not everywhere, because as we know, it's not like you put it everywhere. You gotta know above the fold, below the fold, things like that. But anyway,
but why can't you use? I mean, the first thing that would come into mind is like, if the browser is the one that's handling this, why not put it every single place? I mean. Why?
Well, I mean, so sure, the browser handles if the image is in the viewport and it has to be downloaded. But there's also like you have by default, I think it's loading eager, so it tells load as fast as possible. But if you tell the browser, please download this as lazy, but the image is on above the fold, which you want it to be very fast, and you have the first content from pane and all these core web vitals, you get lowest score because you're telling the browser, please lazy load this, but really the user wants it now. So it's your...
Now that you mentioned this, how do you handle this case? Do you know when an image is going to be above? How do you handle it?
Well, because, no, yes and no. So
okay, let's talk about yes and no.
It's not really rocket science. I mean,
it's complicated.
No. It's in the contrary, it's super simple. We have some templates on the website, and we use AEM, of course. And I know that I have a fixed component that it's at the very top of the page under the menu. And I know that fixed component is a carousel. And I know that the carousel is always going to be above the fold because, of course, it's fixed component. So that was easy.
Well, that's nice. Usually when you have this kind of templates, it's very simple, as you say, because you know exactly what's going to be at the top of the page. And you can decide that these elements, if they have images, they're not lazy loaded. We had a more complicated. At first, we had this, but then the client said, I'd like to put any single component at the top. So we had to remove the fixed components from the top, and now the images, like the images and other stuff, could be put everywhere. And we ended up creating a solution in which we sort of counted the number of components before determining if they had to have if they were above or underneath the fold. But lazy loading is one way to optimize, but there's several other ways to optimize images. I mean, at build time or running in the CI, what would you recommend?
Yes, right. So in the end, if you upload a 4 megabyte hero image and then you just add the loading equals lazy, yeah, sure. I mean, it's optimized, but not really. I think we did this like many years ago, and I think people might sometimes forget because backends and CDNs do it for ourselves. But just compressing images, right? So you get a JPEG straight out of Photoshop, and you then just download that. You want to put it through a compression algorithm. I don't know. There's tools in front-end build tools or external websites or external, even like desktop apps that do this for you, right? So if you're in control of images on assets, you always want to compress them before uploading to the CMS or your website. And
this is one of the things that's out of the box in AM, if I'm not mistaken, that we have the DAM, the Digital Asset Manager, where you can upload a very big image and you can determine which image sizes you want, and it automatically transforms them for you. And then when you add them to the image tag or the picture tag, it gives you the correct rendition. This is definitely reducing the amount of work that you need to do as a developer.
Well, as an author, right? You as an author, you have your picture, or maybe your designer has sent to you a beautiful photo, and then you just upload the big TIFF format, which is of course not for the web, but then AM will just generate JPEGs for you or WebPs for you, which is fantastic.
It is. Another option would be, for example, when you have a service that is serving the correct type, which, for example, I've seen. There's certain service providers that can on the fly determine based on information they receive, like, okay, what type of browser are you? Are you Chrome? Are you Safari? Are you this or that? And based on that, it's like, okay, so you don't support WebP. I'm going to send you the second best option. And here you go a PNG, or here you go on the fly. And the next time, of course, this is cached and sent. Do you have any experience also?
I've read about it. Like like Akamai does this, I think. I don't love it because then you are like, you're handing over this problem like just kicking down the throat. It's like you have a problem with our big images, but then you say, I don't care because the CDN is going to be in front of the user and they're going to just take care of the optimization. But I think if you can, do it early, because in the end, like if you upload to a server, like 10 megabyte images, and then you just let Akamai does it, you're taking up space. You're taking about it's not very eco-friendly to upload stuff that you're not ever gonna use, because why, right? So why not compress it before uploading or during build time, and then you just commit to just upload things that are really going to be used. I don't like to have waste, like digital waste. So.
Well, I like the idea of digital waste. Not that I don't like the idea of digital waste. It's a funny term, digital waste. I like the idea of when you upload something that at that moment, everything that if you know what you're going to use, it is generated. I mean, I'm sure that as a service, you can say, okay, this is the renditions that I'm going to get, and here you go. Here's the image. The service, the Akamai service that you mentioned, I know that it's quite powerful. And for example, it can deliver the image based on exactly the size that you're going to use it at that point. Like if you say, hey, I need my browser window is 973 pixels wide and the image is that wide, it's going to serve you that image size or slightly bigger. And it adapts, which is nice, but it is, as you say, a bit of a waste. The time that we used this service, we didn't use this functionality from them. We basically said, no, just optimize the format. If it's WebP better than PNG for this image for this size, say it. But we're going to be the ones that are going to tell you which size of image we want. We don't want to, because we knew exactly the sizes that we wanted.
No, I think it's nice, and definitely there are use cases, right? Mm-hmm. Again, where the author doesn't have the capability or technical expertise to optimize images before uploading. Sure, upload the big one and then use a CDN or another service to I mean, I understand, right? But if you can avoid it, I mean, if you are in control of the whole flow, or you're a designer, or you can talk to the designer and say, hey, when you export via Photoshop, please use it as a web, maybe use JPEGs at 80%, compression, things like that. So yeah, in the end, if you can do it early, I think it's better. But again, depends on the use case.
Do it early, do it often.
Yeah.
This was something. When were they saying about this? I don't remember the
drinking coffee, probably. Early in the morning and often every day. This is the Frontend Coffee Break, sponsored by
coffee.
Insert coffee brand.
We've discussed a little bit about how the images are being used right now, but there is one. I remember one of the first websites that I ever implemented. I was still in college, and we were doing a website for the comics club that we had back then. And of course, being a comics club, we had a lot of people that knew how to draw. And we wanted to talk about the events and who we are and all this kind of stuff. And we ended up creating this website that I remember that it was not responsive at all, but it was this one huge image that was served.
No, and it was like a PowerPoint, like just, an image, PDF or...
No, it was this one huge image. And I remember back then being super happy that we implemented a hover. And when you hover over the image, it changed. Wow. But the thing is that we were using image maps. I don't know. It's been years since I've used maps. And it still, I think, could be relevant nowadays. But it's something, it's a forgotten technique.
It's totally forgotten. I think I used that back when I was using Dreamweaver as an IDE, Adobe Dreamweaver. You remember? Or Macromedia Dreamweaver. I don't remember. Yes. Yeah. Having like I remember. So the requirement was you had an image and the image had drawn a button or something, and the client wanted, when you click that part of the image, you go to a certain link. So oh my goodness.
Basically, just you created a map with vectors and such to say this area is going to be linked to this link. I mean, when you click on this area, this is what's going to happen. And I remember that we went even a step further, in which we divided the image in chunks. We created a table. Wow. We had the images in the table cells. I remember it was for me like super advanced back then. It's like, oh yes, the table is not a table 3x3, but it has merged cells and even between rows. And it was like, wow. And we had the images precisely separated like this. This was one of the iterations, and it was a lot of fun.
I mean, I haven't seen, at least I haven't noticed that if maps are in the wild. I mean, have you seen like in a modern website using image maps? I don't know. Usually it's like you click the whole thing, right? The whole banner or the whole face of if it's an avatar or if it's product image, right? So I don't see... I don't think users are used to that. Like, let's say you have a hero banner, and then you map the dog to go to the, the product of the dog, and then you map the person to go to the t-shirt detail page. No, it usually doesn't go the way. No, we don't do it anymore.
No, we don't. But I'm sure there has to be very specific use cases. The wonderful thing here in the end, and we were discussing this today, I think in the Frontend channel with pop-ups. When you mentioned the native implementation of pop-up, is that browsers, and we've discussed this before, browsers keep on implementing native stuff. Like, we didn't have a calendar. I remember one of the biggest first components that I did many years ago, and I was super proud of it, was a calendar component, and it was quite complex.
Yeah, I mean, all the dates, months, knowing exactly if it's 28, if it's complex.
No, but how to visualize it, how it worked. Well. And now we have an input tag that just adds a tag that adds the map, and that's it.
No JavaScript. Sorry. Yeah. No CSS, no JavaScript. I love it. I mean, I really like when browsers are pushing this, because it just helps everybody. Like the lazy loading tab, it's just one single attribute for images, but the performance boost is so amazing. It's I love it.
Okay, so okay. Okay, you love it. I'm gonna take it out for dinner. So of the images, let's go for this. To wrap this up, what would be the biggest thing that you remember for images, or that you like from images? Is it lazy loading, or is there anything that you say, oh, I love this about images?
Wow.
Let me begin, if you like.
Go ahead.
What you think.
Go ahead.
One thing that I loved and no longer using, but because this is something that was used in not only in web but in video game development, is CSS sprites. Not the sprites in the CSS part in games necessarily, but yeah, CSS sprite was a way to optimize images back in the day. And when I was reading regarding images, just to freshen up, it's like, oh, that's right, we had CSS sprites. That's nice.
It was nice and quickly deprecated, because again, it's why load a big fat image when you can just optimize everything and just SVGs, right? SVGs or something. What I love about images, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think images are right now in a very good state. Again, sources, different formats. Now lazy loading natively. yeah, I mean, doing it wrong, it's hard because they have so many tools that if you implement it wrong, it's really, you don't really know what you're doing. But doing it right, it's quite easy and low effort. So yeah, I just love that HTML is becoming powerful again.
Nice. Okay, that's all the time that we have for today's podcast. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you, Ricard.
Thank you so much.
And see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.